Hey, what's going on, guys? The NFL season is back, and in this video, I'm going to be covering my NFL Week 1 picks, but I will be sending out some email updates closer to the season, so make sure you're signed up for my free email list. Just click on that link in the YouTube description below. All right, let's get right into the picks. So just a bit of a heads up here that these are mostly sleeper picks that I'll be throwing in the larger GPP contests. I look for potentially lower owned players that could have good games and throw them in a few lineups, and I most likely won't be all in on any of these guys. But instead of giving out some of the high-end guys like Antonio Brown, Tom Brady, whoever it might be, I figured I would do mostly sleeper picks this year. All right, so my first set of picks here is going to be a quarterback and wide receiver stack. I'm going to be pairing Blake Bortles, who's 5,600 at DraftKings, with Keelan Cole, who's 3,800 in Week 1. Cole should be pretty popular at that price, and I think Bortles should be pretty low-owned in all formats pretty much. So pretty good spot here in New York against the Giants, 3-point favorites, a lower total at 43.5 points, but quarterbacks and receivers had success against the Giants last year, fantasy-wise and just production-wise. The Giants were 31st in the NFL in passing yards against per game, 27th in passing yards against per attempt, and gave up a league-high 32 passing touchdowns. So I do think this is a pretty good spot for the Jags, targeting Bortles and Cole. Cole I'm going to have quite a bit of. Bortles will just sprinkle in some GPP lineups. Bortles finished the season off strong. He's a cheap option, and he should be low-owned in a good matchup. And with Marquise Lee injured, Cole should step into the number one role for the Jags. We're not really sure how that's going to shake out yet, but Cole did have a pretty good ending to last year in those couple games where Allen Robinson was still out and Lee was injured. In Cole's 2 games with 6 or more receptions last year, he had 34 and 19 DraftKings points. So if he does get the targets that I'm expecting and he does get the receptions, I think he could have a big game, and 3,800 is too cheap. He's not really a sleeper pick this week, but I do think he makes for a good play, and if you pair him with Bortles, I think that will be a pretty low-owned stack. Next up here, we got a running back, Peyton Barber from the Bucs at 4,100. The Bucs are in New Orleans, 7.5-point underdogs with a high total at 49.5. That total has come down a bit. I think it opened at 52, but it's still a very high total. The Bucs are still expected to score some points. The Saints were 27th in yards against per rushing attempt last year, and it looks like Peyton Barber has locked up the number one role to start the season. It wasn't really expected that he would be kind of the workhorse type back, which is why he's at 4,100 on DraftKings, but it looks like he will be to start the season. So I do really like him at that price. In his 2 games last year with a good amount of carries, he put up 21 DraftKings points on 23 carries and 17 DraftKings points on 17 carries. So I would expect him to get around maybe hopefully 17 touches and hopefully put up maybe like 20 DraftKings points would be quite a bit for that price tag. So I do think he's a good option. There are lots of great running back options in Week 1, but he should be lower owned, and he's a nice cheap option that I'll be playing a decent amount here in Week 1. All right, so next up we got my wide receiver pick. I'm going to be going with Emmanuel Sanders, who's 5,000 in Week 1 on DraftKings. I'm not too sure where his ownership will be. I'm not sure if he'll be considered a sleeper pick, but I wanted to throw him out there. He's at that price range where you're not really too sure how many people are going to be on him. He's not really cheap, but he's not expensive either. I think he's a good price at 5,000. I'll be playing him a decent amount here in Week 1 with the Broncos facing the Seahawks at home. They're 2.5-point favorites. We got a lower total at 42 points. Emmanuel Sanders is coming off a season full of injuries. He had a kind of a rough go last year, and he also had to play with 3 different quarterbacks, not the greatest quarterbacks to say the least. So he's getting an upgrade this year with Case Keenum under center for the Broncos. And despite Demaryius Thomas being labeled the number 1 wide receiver in Denver, Sanders saw 8+ targets in 50% of his games played last year. So he does get a lot of looks. Both him and DT usually get a lot of looks. If Sanders is going to get somewhere around 8 targets from Keenum, I love him at 5,000. So I'll be playing him this week. Not too sure where the ownership will be, but either way, I like him quite a bit. So my tight end sleeper pick for Week 1 is going to be Ben Watson, who's $3,100 on DraftKings. I do think ownership on tight ends should be pretty spread out, and I do think Ben Watson should be a sleeper pick here in Week 1. It's kind of a risky pick. I'll get to that in a second. Watson's with his new team, the Saints. Like I mentioned earlier, they're playing the Bucs. The Saints are 7.5-point favorites. We've got a high total at 49.5 points. Watson was playing with the Ravens last year, and when he saw 8+ targets, he scored 13, 11, 8, and 17 DraftKings points. So I do think he is a good pass-catching tight end. I do think he's athletic and can put up a big DraftKings score. And now with Drew Brees throwing to him, I like him quite a bit here at this price tag. It is a bit of a gamble with him playing on a new team, but I'm going to gamble a little bit and play Ben Watson a decent amount here in week 1 as a little bit of a sleeper, cheaper sleeper pick for tight end. If you're playing DFS anywhere this year and you're looking to win some money, I highly recommend you check out the Fantasy Labs tools. I'll leave my link to Fantasy Labs in the description below the video. You can copy over my Sports Geek Pro model over into your own models when you sign up for an account, and you can use all the other tools they have over there. Again, can't say enough about Fantasy Labs. Highly recommend you check them out. I'll leave that link in the description below the video. All right, guys, so thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please do me a big favor. Hit that thumbs up button on YouTube. It will help support my YouTube channel. And make sure you click that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of my future videos. And good luck this week. Hopefully hit it big. Hopefully one of you guys wins that $1 million. Talk to you guys later, and good luck.